Майкл, расскажите нам про основную тему ваших научных исследований на сегодня.
So I thought I would talk about something different than what I just did on stage there, which dealt with my latest book on the search for the afterlife and immortality. Instead, I'll just kind of speak more broadly about what we do at Skeptic magazine and Skeptic.com and so on, dealing with science and pseudoscience, science and religion, science and God, science and morality, science and alternative medicine. The common ingredient is science. And in addition to examining claims in a fact-checking way, which sometimes we're called debunkers, but there's a lot of bunk that needs debunking, so that's okay. We're also interested in why people believe bunk or pseudoscience or religion or anything, for that matter, and so it really gets to the kind of deepest issues of what is truth. How do you know anything is true, and how are we to determine reality? So, for example, if I say dark chocolate is better than milk chocolate, that's the absolute truth. Now, maybe you say, no, milk chocolate's better than dark chocolate. Okay. This is not really an objective truth. This is an internal preference, just a feeling I have that cannot really be resolved by science. If I say something like, there's 63 people here in this circle, that we can determine is true or false by just counting. So those would be like two extremes of internal subjective states versus external objective reality, and everything is sort of in between that. So if someone says, I went to the afterlife, or I visited the mothership in the UFO, okay, those are more on the end of probably internal subjective states created by the mind, because we know the brain is capable of fantastic hallucinations. As I mentioned, when people tell me these stories, they sound an awful lot like my friends back in the 70s who used to take acid trips and tell me about these trips. They sound indistinguishable to me, so that leads me to put them in the category of kind of internal states. But at some point, it starts to shade over into the kind of middle ground where it gets a little dicier. Say, take something like creationism, which we deal with a lot, and I'm pretty confident is wrong. But they make the case that people that teach evolution have sort of an unfair advantage in being in the power structure to say this is what's true because this is what we believe, and you don't believe it, so it must not be true. That's not good enough. We can't just say that. That's still an argument from authority. We still have to argue, well, why is this probably true and this one's probably not true? So this kind of gets to the communal nature of science, in the sense that it can't just be what I think or what you think or what you think. It has to be open to all of us to examine it and decide for yourselves in some way that's testable. So we figured this out over the centuries since Galileo's time, in which he insisted that the Vatican astronomers look through this new tube he had made. This long tube with a lens on one end and an eyepiece on the other end, and there were lots of theories about what was out there, but hardly anyone ever looked because the instruments were not available or they were very poor. So he kept saying, but look through the tube and you'll see that you're wrong. So the look through the tube is a metaphor for don't take my word for it, look for yourself. And that's what we've been doing ever since for centuries, is figuring out how to test claims in some manner that anyone can decide if it's true or not. So for something more controversial today, at least in America, climate change, global warming. Unfortunately, this subject, which is just science, it's just a study of the atmosphere as it changes over time. It's no different than any other boring technical science with a lot of math. But because Al Gore made a movie that won an Academy Award and was seen by millions of people, and he was once the vice president of the Democratic Party for 2 administrations, climate change and global warming got associated with a political party. And so it now shifted to that you guys are saying that because of some power thing, and you want to control business or control industry, or you hate capitalism or whatever. And so it's not enough just to say, well, but that's irrelevant, because that is true. That happens a lot because science is politicized. So we have to get beyond that. And so when we talk about the consensus in science about climate, you know about the IPCC, and they talk about their consensus. They release these reports every few years in which all the different organizations that study the various aspects of climate and people who count up all the papers and abstracts to see which conclusions they have and so on. And they come up with this figure of 97%. Okay, what is that? This is not democracy. It's not 97% voted that they believe in global warming. No, that's not what this is. Because science isn't a democracy. We're not just voting to see how we feel about something. Like, I want higher taxes, I want lower taxes, all right, let's vote. No, these are the people that do this for a living, professionally and competitively, in different fields, and they're all converging to this one conclusion. Not all, 97% of peer-reviewed, published papers in climate science conclude that global warming is real and human-caused. Okay. What about the 3%? Maybe they're right. It's happened before. 97% of people thought that the Earth was the center of the solar system. They were wrong. Okay, whatever. Yes, it's possible the 3% are right and the 97% are wrong. It's possible, but not very likely. For several reasons. One is that they're not all in the same club. It's not like they're all at the Vatican as the Vatican astronomers. They are working in different institutions, different universities, different countries, different fields. So you have somebody that studies glaciers, somebody else that studies the migration of birds, somebody else that studies sea level rise, somebody else that studies whatever. And they all converge to this same conclusion. It's not like they're meeting on the weekends to say, we got to get our story straight because those conservatives or those liberals, no. They don't even know each other, and they still converge to this conclusion. So this is the idea behind a consensus in science, that it's not any one person or any one organization, and anybody can look this stuff up. You can read the IPCC report. Some of it's kind of technical, but you can read it, and you can read it, and I can read it, and we can say, okay, this is probably true. True with a small t, not a capital T. And that's what we want to do in all of science. Now, so the reason for this is because our brains are designed to believe things first and then find the facts to support what we want to believe. That's what our brains do. So our brains are more like lawyers than scientists. The job of the lawyer is to win the case for his client, no matter what. Bury the evidence, hide evidence, collude, whatever. That's the idea. You just got to win. Okay, and so we can't do that in science, but that's what our brains want to do. And this is true for scientists because they're competitive, they have careers, they want their theories to be true, fine. But the system in science says you can't depend on that, and if you don't figure out where your errors are and find the faults in your own research and so on, someone else will, so you better be super careful when you run your experiments to make sure you did it right and to make sure you didn't find what you were hoping to find, but you're wrong. Because this does happen a lot, even in science. So there has to be some system set up to get around this problem. So we've been aware of this, for centuries, that humans have what we call cognitive biases, confirmation bias, where you look for and find confirming evidence, which you want it to be true, and you ignore the disconfirming evidence. Or the hindsight bias, however something turned out, that's how it had to be, and you just look back and find the causal connections, and so on. There's like 50 of these biases that we've discovered now that influence the way we look at the world. And it's a real indictment against our belief that we're rational, objective creatures. We're not. So we have to have some system to work around that, so it's not just you finding what you want to be true. And pretty much that's everything that science and skepticism is about, is just finding ways to test claims to find out if it's true or not, because somebody wants it to be true and somebody else doesn't want it to be true, and that's irrelevant. So much of what we do at Skeptic is just kind of examining whatever claims come down the pike. I can't believe the flat earthers have made a comeback, but I don't think they're particularly dangerous. Flat earthers, Mormons, Scientologists, they're not going to fly planes into buildings because they believe something so passionately. So I'm not worried about them. I'm more worried about dangerous ideas that people believe that are not true. So certain religious beliefs, certain political beliefs, certain beliefs about medicine, for example. We spend a lot of time on cancer quackery, AIDS quackery, all the different alternative modalities that people spend money on. These are dangerous because people waste money on them, they waste time, they give up common medical treatments. And in any case, there's no such thing as alternative medicine. Do you know what you call alternative medicine that has evidence? Medicine. It's a little joke. There's just science. There's no pseudoscience. There's just the normal. There's no paranormal. There's no supernatural. There's just the natural. These are just words we use to describe things we don't understand or we can't figure out. So we have to be careful about the language we use. So when someone says they can talk to the dead, say, oh, it's a paranormal ESP thing. Okay, first of all, anybody can talk to the dead. It's getting the dead to talk back. That's the hard part. Okay, and some of these so-called psychics appear to be able to do this. Well, we now know how they do it. I've done it. You can do it. It's not that hard. It's called cold reading technique. But understanding that and figuring out how that works to prevent people from being harmed, that's an important thing that we could do. So a lot of these claims, like we're dealing with now, in addition to climate deniers, are the anti-vaxxers, people that are against vaccinations. You know, based on one study that was retracted, was determined to be fraudulent, that found some link between vaccines and autism. Okay, it's completely bogus, but because it was published in a major medical journal and circulated for a couple years, it got a toehold in an area where we don't have understanding. So here's another principle that when there's a gap in scientific knowledge, we don't understand this, X, whatever it is, people then jump in to fill it in with their preferred theory. So in creationism, we call this the God of the gaps. Like, I can't figure out where the eye came from or DNA or whatever. God did it. Okay, that's not an answer. That's just a word. You're just sticking a word in there. We need an actual mechanism, an actual... Okay, so, you know, we don't know the cause of autism. You know, there's some genetics, maybe... interuterine chemical stuff. Who knows? We don't know the cause of autism. Maybe the age of the mother's eggs. We don't know. So when we don't know something, then anybody that has a theory gets a hearing. And parents that have autistic kids that are desperate to try something, anything, will glom onto that. And that's where it becomes dangerous. So that's why we try to focus on those particular ideas rather than something like the flat earthers that are relatively harmless. Why don't we have some questions? And
First of all, thank you for your lecture. It was very interesting. And I have a question about science in general. And I hear a lot of people talking that I don't need to know science. It's not something that I could use in my life. Which is like, they don't even know, I don't know, which planet is third from sun, you know. I hear that a lot. It's really not a joke. But how would you interest someone else, especially if it's not a child, if it's adult? How would you interest adult in science, any kind of science?
right. Obviously, it would depend who it is. Kids absorb it a lot faster, I think. And there's a lot of great content online now. I've been amazed in just the last few years about the quality of the content available on anything, but particularly science. YouTube videos, podcasts. I devour podcasts and audiobooks and so on. It's just great. And YouTube videos, you can sit there all night watching them. It's just amazing. And most of them are pretty good. Wikipedia is pretty good. There's a lot of content. Now, getting somebody interested, that's a different question. They probably already are interested in the sense that they use the technology of science. The iPhone, they get in planes. I mean, most people are not science deniers. Even the climate deniers are not deniers about pretty much everything else. The climate denier will climb aboard a 747 and fly at 30,000 feet and not think twice about it. Well, it's the same kind of science that is involved in understanding the climate. They just sort of pick it. I mean, there's actually a deeper principle there that most people accept science unless it bumps up against some cherished or important moral value that they hold. So I mentioned climate associated with liberal politics. Maybe creationism, evolution is associated with with being anti-religion. Something like that. Otherwise, they accept the science. So, in terms of pulling somebody in and getting them interested, a good book or a good science documentary or something that can sometimes work. There's a lot of good popular science writing now.
I want to ask you, what do you think about homeopathy?
Homeopathy, oh boy. Well, I'm pretty skeptical. If you don't know what homeopathy is, it's been around for quite a while. It's the idea that it's a little bit like finds like, a little sympathetic magic, that you take a substance that allegedly has some curative power and you put it in some water and then you dilute it. And you dilute it again and you dilute it again and you dilute it again. So many times that the chances of there being even one molecule of the original substance in the homeopathic remedy is close to zero. So what is it that it's supposed to do? Well, there's something called water memory, that the molecular memory of the structure of the molecule that was in the water is held by the water. So when you drink it, the curative power of the original molecule that's not in there still somehow affects your body. Okay. You don't need to know chemistry to know this is nonsense. We have a technical word for this in America. It's called bullshit. That if this were true, tap water would be the best thing you could drink because it's come in contact with everything, including a lot of stuff you wouldn't want to drink. Okay, so by memory, I mean even if it's filtered water and so. But we know that. But setting that aside, controlled experiments, tests done with the homeopathic remedy and a placebo, really they're the same thing. So you're testing a placebo against a placebo. There's no experimental group. There's just the control group, the placebo group. And we know that nothing happens unless the person thinks something good might happen. And this applies to any of these other alternative claims, like acupuncture, for example. Acupuncture can work. Acupuncture, where you stick needles in certain places. So it turns out there was a big study done in Germany in 2003 on several hundred patients that had migraine headaches. And so they had a experimental group that got the treatment. And then they had two other groups, a control group that got no treatment at all. And then another group that got faux or fake acupuncture needle treatment. Now this is kind of hard to do because you'd know if somebody stuck a needle in you. Boom. Okay, these needles are really thin. So they had to... And the way acupuncture needles work is the needle comes in a little tube. And so you sort of put the tube here and you just tap the needle like that. And then you take the tube off and the needle is now stuck and you twist it and you dangle it and so on. And it does its thing. Okay. So you have to do this with the patients where you put the tube on there and you tap it, but there's no needle. They just think they're getting the needle. Okay. But there's no needle going in at all. And they did as well as the actual acupuncture patients. So for some reason, just thinking I'm getting treated with needles made their headache lessen in pain. Okay, now, this isn't treating cancer or AIDS. Migraine headaches, like any kind of pain, is a subjective internal state that you have to ask people, how are you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is your headache right now? It's an 8. Okay. Boom. All right. How's your headache now? It's a 6. All right. Does that count? Is that an improvement? Yeah, a little bit. Now we do the fake needle. It's a 6. All right. In other words, no difference. But all you're doing is manipulating somebody's subjective state of how they feel about their pain. You're not changing the DNA structure of the tumor cell in your pancreas. This is not doing anything like that. So it only works with these subjective states. And this would apply to, like, depression. You know, much of treatment of depression is based on these internal subjective states where you have to ask somebody, how are you feeling today? I'm really depressed. How depressed? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being worst, how depressed are you? I'm a 9. All right? Here, take some of these SSRIs that, are supposed to change your brain chemistry and make you less depressed. Okay, and then you go away and you come back 2 weeks later, my depression's a 5. Okay, that's better. But this is the problem with this research, is it's all dependent on these subjective reports of how you're feeling on a scale. And you're not measuring like the size of a tumor. You know, it's not objective like that. And it gets us back to that problem of the difference between these internal states and external reality. There's a fuzzy area there.
Добрый день. У меня вопрос такой. Я сижу дома, например, обедаю, мне стучат в дверь, и там стоят парочка людей, которые говорят: мы спасем твою душу, мы сейчас расскажем тебе, в чем правда. Религиозные люди зачастую популяризируют свою правду, они ходят по людям, там, предлагают всякое спасение души и так далее. А должны ли люди от науки ходить по креационическим храмам и рассказывать им правду? Должны ли они тратить время от поиска истины, чтобы участвовать в религиозно-научных дебатах? Например, Докинс не хочет разговаривать с креационистами вообще, но такие дебаты происходят. Имеет смысл в том, чтобы популяризировать людям, которые, далеки от науки.
That's great. Yes, I want you all to go out after tonight, door to door, knocking on doors, and save souls for Darwin. I'm here and take a copy of The Origin of Species. Yes. I don't know if that's going to work. Actually, somebody a few years ago, a British film crew came to America, and they went to Utah, where all the Mormons live, and they were knocking on door to door with copies of The Origin of Species. It's a hilarious video to watch because doors are slamming and get that crap out of here. But if we came to tell you about Jesus, anyway, it's kind of a funny story. Well, this gets back to the knowledge consumption problem. In part, we want people to be interested in science, interested. It doesn't matter that how interested they are in a way. We just want people to support it and accept it and so on. But if people go searching for something like a deeper meaning, science can only take us so far. I mean, no one goes to an ichthyologist to ask about the meaning of life. If you're not religious, maybe you're a Buddhist, because they're not really religious in the traditional sense, or a philosopher, or humanism is sort of what we're talking about here. Secular humanism. In Europe, there's a lot of secular humanist churches, sort of. They're buildings, and they meet on Sundays, and they talk about the important things in life and spirituality, and they're not religious though. They're spiritual but not religious, as the dating sites call it. And they sing hymns to Newton. They light candles, and they have people come up and tell their stories of how they lost their religion and they found science. And that's all great. I've been to a bunch of these, and it doesn't do it for me personally. I don't feel I need to go to a building on Sundays, but a lot of people do. Pretty much every Jewish friend I have is an atheist, but they still say, I'm Jewish, culturally Jewish. They like the tradition, the meals, the community, the holiday, the whole thing, and they're atheists. So you don't need God for any of that. So the deeper question here is, do people need religion? No. But what is it about religion that appeals to people? Well, this part or that part, the family, community, friends, all my friends go. Free parking. Stuff like this that people find appealing. You don't have to have a belief in the supernatural to have that. You can have that with anything, any meetup Facebook group that comes here or something. In fact, we're doing it now. This is a kind of a humanist, spiritual, secular, whatever you want to call this. It's a science geek picnic. That's what it is. It's the same kind of thing, and so there's more and more of these happening now in America. Although we are a weirdly religious society. We are the most religious Western democracy by far. No one's even close. If you take all the European countries and so on, they're all pretty non-religious. And so we stand out as the anomaly. And the weird thing is that the wealthier a country gets, the less religious they get. And the more technologically sophisticated they are and industrialized they are, the less religious they get, except for America. So it's sort of a weird thing. So there's two theories about this. One is that because we have a separation of church and state and always have, religion has had to compete in the marketplace of ideas, and they've gotten better at attracting customers by going door to door and by creating church experiences that people want. And European churches didn't need to do that. And the second one has to do with the fact that the other function of religion is to take care of poor people and people that need help. And if your government doesn't do that, then religions do it. So it's sort of privatized Social Security, privatized welfare, privatized help for the needy. And European countries, they have a tight social safety net. They take care of everybody. And so religion, what's there left to do? Nothing. Right. So in America, our social safety net is not so good. So there's a lot of poor people, a lot of people that are still need help. And so religions, they man the soup kitchens, they take care of the homeless. We have a huge homeless problem in Los Angeles. 100,000 people on the streets. It's unbelievable. And the government does pretty much nothing about it. Or they build a homeless shelter and make showers, and then 50,000 more come into LA because it's like, go to LA, the weather's great, and they got free showers. Okay, so I have to say, religion does play a role, to do something like that. That's helpful. Anyway, But that's kind of a deeper social issue.
I have a question about agnosticism. What do you especially think about agnosticism? What do people in America think about agnosticism? Because they believe that there's no 100% way to prove that something like God or even Cthulhu exists. So I'm interested in doing.
Yep. Okay, these words, these labels. So, an atheist, a theist, is someone who believes in God.
I mean, agnostics.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting there. And an atheist is simply someone who does not believe in God. Now, sometimes philosophers make a distinction between strong atheism and weak atheism. So weak atheism is just, I don't believe in God, full stop. Strong atheism is, I believe there is no God. So it's a little stronger epistemological statement of belief that I'm very confident there's no God, as opposed to, I just don't believe that there is. Okay. Agnosticism is often associated with, I'm not sure and I'm keeping an open mind. That isn't what the word means. The word was coined in 1869 by Thomas Henry Huxley, a friend of Darwin, Darwin's bulldog, big defender of evolution. And he wasn't quite sure he was an atheist, and neither was Darwin. Because Huxley said, atheists seem very confident that there is no God. And that's not a tenable position. How would you know there's no God? It would be like my saying, I know there's no extraterrestrial intelligences out there anywhere in the cosmos. How could you say that? I haven't been everywhere. Okay, so it's a little bit like that. So Huxley said he's an agnostic, meaning just without knowledge, in the sense that it's not possible to know. Not that we don't know now, but maybe we'll figure it out. You know, like global warming maybe 25 years ago. Ooh, this hypothesis, it might be true, might not. I don't know, let's do some more research and find out. No, there's no research you're going to do that's, there's a God. I ran this experiment. There he is. He's in the test tube, or he's in the large hadron, the collider, the Hadron Collider in Switzerland. No, or up there in the Hubble Space Telescope found him. So this gets at that I mentioned in my talk. Any sufficiently advanced extraterrestrial intelligence would be indistinguishable from God. Play on Arthur C. Clarke's third law that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. How would you know if there's a God? What is God? Well, God can create life, create planets, universes, cure cancer, whatever you think God could do. Okay, well, we're pretty close to being able to create living organisms. J. Craig Ventnor, the co-discoverer or whatever of the human genome, he was the head of the private project for the human genome. He has synthesized a synthetic genome. He completely made up his own genome in the lab. That's kind of like creating life. He's working on cells now, right? So, is he God? If doctors can cure cancer, are they God? Some of them think they are, but this is a little quip that atheists like to say to theists. Why can't God heal amputees? He apparently can heal headaches and cancers and so on, but the million amputees that have come back from wars, not one of them can be cured. Why? They don't believe strong enough. God doesn't like amputees. No, because an amputee growing a new limb would be on that what is truth problem, the epistemological problem. That would be definitive proof. That would do it. I mean, salamanders can do it, right? Certain lizards can grow new tails. Why can't God do that? He can't even do that. Okay, you see what I'm getting at? There's anything that could do that, we would say, well, then that must be God. But the Christian or the theist would say, no, that's not God. That's just advanced technology or advanced understanding of biology or whatever. No, I mean something, big. But, far future, humans will be able to engineer solar systems. I mean, we're talking about, re-engineering the atmosphere of Mars. Now, one bad way to do it would be to burn a lot of fossil fuels in the atmosphere of Mars to create a greenhouse effect. Okay, that's not a good plan. But terraforming Mars and turning it into a green planet, this is very doable. Not easily, not now, maybe in a couple centuries. But does that make us God? In other words, you just scale up, and at some point, anything that we could do, a believer would just say, that's not what I mean by God. I mean something else. And at some point, there are no gaps left to fill, and then God is just outside of space and time. Okay, how would you know he's real then? Because we're in space and time. How would you know? What experiment can we run? I just feel like it's real. Okay, sorry. That's not good enough.